Hey Beer Geeks, and welcome to one of the most incredible breweries we have ever visited on the channel. Just look at where we are. How idyllic is this? Rows and rows of beautiful hops, gorgeous countryside, and we're looking at it from the roof terrace of St. Bernardus Brewery. Brewers of some of the best Belgian beers ever made, some of my favourite beers ever made, and it's a brewery with an incredible story with great links to St. Sixtus or Westvleteren brewing and Trappist monasteries even further back. And today we're going to be telling you that story, tasting some incredible beers and exploring this phenomenal brewery. It's absolutely blown my mind making this video. Welcome to Watu and welcome to St. Bernardus. By Belgian standards, St. Bernardus is a pretty young brewery, but they've packed a lot into their 70-year history, including being a cheese factory, brewing the original Westvleteren 12, nearly going out of business, and finally building what has to be one of the most incredible and unexpected breweries we've ever visited.
It's like a Bond villain lair.
Brad and I have been long-time lovers of all their beers, but unusually for us, we hadn't really given a second's thought to the brewery or the people behind them. When we realised we'd be passing by on another project, we decided to make a film, and it's one of the best decisions we've made on the channel. Not only is this a remarkable place to be making old-school Abbey-inspired Belgian ale, it's a remarkable place to drink it. It's hard to think of a more modern brewery or taproom, but equally hard to think of a more traditional beer range and approach. But it's that tension between young and old that makes St. Bernardus great, as you're about to find out, starting with a history lesson in the brewery's visitor centre. So the story, as with so many of these breweries here in Belgium, is that it starts with a monastery. So it was a monastery actually in France. The monks there fled, potentially for tax reasons, maybe for safety as well. They fled pretty much to where we're standing today, a couple of 100 meters away, and they founded a monastery which they were funding by making cheese. Now eventually these monks, most of them went back to France once things had calmed down, and they left behind this cheese business which was bought by an entrepreneur who started or continued to make the cheese. Now what happened was St. Sixtus, which is a couple of miles away from here, they decided they wanted to start brewing their own beers. They decided they wanted to brew it just for themselves, but they still wanted to make money from it for the upkeep of the monastery. So they contracted this guy, our cheese entrepreneur, to make the beer for them. And that is kind of where this brewery starts. So that contract actually lasted all the way up to 1992. So all of the recipes that St. Bernardus have, or many of them, came from that era and were in fact sort of St. Sixtus beers. And you can see that in the bottles that we've got. You can see the development of the brand of these Trappist beers developing through the years. And once you get to this point, around the late 1950s, you'll start to recognize it as much as St. Bernardus as you would St. Sixtus. So that continues all the way up to 1992, which is a dark day for the brewery. The Trappist monasteries of Belgium and around the world decide that to be an authentic Trappist product, it has to be made by the monks and within the walls of the monastery, all the rules that we know that are associated with this badge. So that, of course, meant that St. Bernardus could no longer produce the beers and still call it a Trappist beer. So the Westvleteren monks, or the St. Sixtus monks, I should say, brought that back in-house, the founding of the modern Westvleteren brewery, where they still brew it today, but actually with Westmalle yeast, interestingly enough. So this was a dark day for the brewery. Their entire volume disappeared overnight, but they had the rights to the recipes, so it was more a case of them needing to reinvent themselves. But that took a little while. That was very hard to do. Obviously, the love was there for the monk's beer. That was essentially 6 years of trying to rebrand itself until Hans comes along, who owns the brewery today. He bought it in 1998. He turned it around, he focused more on keg beer, he brought in some new, more modern recipes within a couple of years, and started to build what we have here. Now, this is the brewery tour. It's an absolutely incredible thing. I've never been on a brewery tour like it, and I've been to Guinness, Anheuser-Busch, all of these. It's an incredible setup that they've put together. And now we're gonna have a little look around and learn a bit more about the brewery. So you can see St. Sixtus up top. In fact, no mention of St. Bernardus here, but you can see here St. Bernard just beneath the Abbey. St. Six's here, right at the bottom, you've got St. Bernardus. And that really starts to switch even when they're still making the beer. You can even see like the name of the road that we're on is Trappisten-Weg, and that would have come from back then when the monastery was on this road, or the French monks, the original French monks. That's why it's got that name, but of course it's no longer a Trappist monastery. And you know, this is not a Trappist brewery. They make Trappist-inspired styles and wit beers. Right, so this is the room that talks about the beers. So obviously this is the flagship. It's the 12, it's one of the best beers in the world. It is in fact the original recipe of Westvleteren 12. This is still the same recipe that they brewed way back in 1946. Obviously with some process changes, but what's written on the page is essentially still the same. You can see the growth of recipes as the market changed. So then we get the triple coming in 1990, so that was still under the control of the St. Sixtus monks. And then we get to one of the first beers introduced once Hans owned the brewery in 2002. So we've got a wit beer. If you may remember from the summer of the early 2000s, wit beer was getting cool, Hoegaarden was everywhere. So that's probably where that came from. That obviously started in Belgium. So that's why that came out as an attempt, also as a lower ABV option. By the way, we're going to talk about this with Marco later, but it is confirmed every 1,000 bottles have a winking monk, and there's an awesome story behind that. We got to get through the door, we got to get through the door before it closes. So we've now entered the brewing area of the Crystal Maze. This is the old brew house in its original situ. It's about to kick off this story. These tanks are about to start talking in my earphones here. So this is where it originally was. This is still in situ. You can see you've got the mash tun here, this for the runoff to check the clarity, the gravity, stuff like that. And then this steamy vessel will be the boiler. Not enough dry ice in craft breweries, I tell you. So this is a little peek through to the new brew house, which we'll have a look at in a sec. So you can see through here, this is the fermentation. So this brewery makes about 50,000, just over 50,000 hectolitres a year, which when you're talking about some beers that are 10%, that's a lot of fermentation to happen. And that's all happening through here in these big, big stainless steel tanks. No interactive brewery tour is complete without a little scratch and sniff. So from this, we have to guess what it is. That's coriander. Coriander. So this is all automated, state-of-the-art brewing, 4-vessel system, cranking out 50,000 hectolitres a year of absolutely giant beer. But as you can see, it's fully automated now. That's the control and where they're doing it. Although you can see they've still got man waste, so the hops will be going in by hand. They're taking gravity readings, pH readings, all that kind of stuff down at the brewer station. So it's a mix, which is, I think, where the best beer is made, when it's hands-on, but it's also automated to make things easier for the brewers so they can focus on the important stuff. Thank you, Star Trek door. Kind of plywood Star Trek. So this is a clock that's trying to tell us the time. It's very, very important in brewing, in particular in Belgian brewing, if you're going to bottle condition your beer. So where most breweries would have a cold room, where they keep the beers really cold, that's the best place for particularly hoppy beers and lagers to be. You have lots of warm rooms in Belgian breweries and some British breweries where they're helping the re-fermentation. It's at about 20, 21 degrees so that you get carbonation in the bottle, and that is what the clock is trying to tell us. And here is the giant bottling line. I'd love to tell you how many bottles come through every minute. I don't know, but it's lots. So all the bottles that come in are being cleaned, that have been out there in the trade. Then we get to filling, so that's what this big whirly gig is doing. So the beers are all being filled. Really weirdly, of course, the beer is flat. There's a tiny bit of carbonation in there, but there's not a huge amount because that's going to be added in the bottle. So through here is that warm room I told you about. So this is where the beer goes. Once it's packaged, you sit there for a couple of weeks, get that re-fermentation in bottle, which adds character to the beer, it adds natural fermentation, lovely soft fine bubbles, which means that you can have lots of carbonation like we have in Belgian beers without it being too much. So that's why they do that and why it takes a lot more time and why they need a lot of storage in this place. But yeah, this is the warm room where the beers will be stored, and just through there as well to get carved. Should we exit through the gift shop? I think we should exit through the gift shop. It's not an entirely unique experience to see traditional beer going through a state-of-the-art kit. We've seen it at countless breweries in Germany, the UK and indeed Belgium. But the fact that so much of it has happened since the late 1990s is pretty unusual. To learn the story of what happened after the trauma of St Bernardus losing its contract with Westvleteren, we had a beer with Marco Pasarea. He joined the brewery when it was perhaps at its lowest point. Marco, thank you so much for having us. It's incredibly exciting to be here, having been a huge fan of this particular beer for a decade at least.
Welcome.
Why don't we crack it open and maybe tell me the history of this amazing place?
So we're drinking St Bernardus Abt 12. I guess you guys have visited the brewery a little bit.
Well, today we have. This is the first time. So I was like a child in the back of the car on the way over.
Yeah.
Just so excited.
So I don't know if you noticed, the first thing that's kind of strange from our brewery is the fact that you pour our beer with the glass on the table and just slowly pour it and make sure that you get a nice thick foamy head. So no tilting the glass or lifting it or anything like that.
You want that explosion?
Yeah, we want that explosion of. So that's why our glass is actually 62 centiliter full.
Huh. So you've made it bigger to have that head.
Yes. If you ever come across it in a pub and they pour it to the rim, then you're drinking a pint or more.
Which you need to know when it's this beer.
You need to know, yes. It's kind of a deceiving beer, right? It's a 10% one, so.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, cheers.
Cheers.
Welcome to the brewery.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So this is based on and very close to a 1946 recipe, is that right? So
yeah,
that
we got
all
this
the way
is
back.
basically it's the same beer that we started brewing in 1946, back in the days when Mathieu Zafransky, the brewmaster of Westvleteren, came over here to the brewery to start brewing here. You have to know that we were asked by the Trappist monks of Westvleteren, being a cheese factory before that, we were asked by them, do you want to commercialize our beer? Mm-hmm. And because the owner of the cheese factory and the abbot of Westvleteren, they were friends playing cards together.
Card playing monks, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so the monks didn't want to commercialize their own beer anymore, and they gave a license to us to brew for them under license, and we started doing that back in 1946 for a period of, in total, 46 years, up until 1992, when our license came to an end. But actually, we still brew the same beer with the same recipe and with the same yeast strain than back then. The only thing that really changed is the name of our beer, mm-hmm. and the fact that our beer is not a Trappist beer anymore. It's now an Abbey beer, mm-hmm. Which is also strange because after us, they also implemented another authentic logo, and that was for the Abbey beers. And we're not an authentic Abbey beer either.
Because I did not know there was an Abbey designation.
Yeah, there's an Abbey designation as well. And to get that, you need to have a bond with an Abbey. Right. And ours is two Trappist monasteries, the one making cheese just across the border in France called Mont des Cats, and the other one, Westvleteren, but we don't have an actual bond right now mm-hmm. with them. So we were not able to be even an Abbey beer. Mm-hmm. So,
but those markations aren't about the quality of the beer, it's more...
I guess not.
No.
I guess not. Trappist beer is not, it doesn't stand for a type of beer. Mm-hmm. It stands for the fact that it's brewed by the Trappist monks inside the walls and supervised by the monks. And they had to wait until our license came to an end in 1992 to implement that idea.
So in 1992, they took their production in-house, mm-hmm. which left you, I guess, not with like sort of no production anymore. You were still making the beers, but you just had to rebrand suddenly.
Yeah, we rebranded them, and actually what happened was that the monks became a little bit our competitors at that time, because they started selling for themselves again, and you could go and buy the crates of beer at their door. Yeah. But they limited the production, so we were still selling a fair amount of beer, but it was very difficult to grow. So in the first let's say in the first from 92 till maybe 98, it was a little bit dark and gloomy over here, because they were also looking for somebody to take over the brewery. So because they were looking for somebody to buy the brewery from them, they didn't invest anymore. So when Hans de Peper came over to buy it in 92, he found a brewery that was a little bit run down. Run down.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Run out. Okay. It was run down, and we had to do some investments and make sure that we could be ready for the future again. And Hans thought that he would have a small investment and then everything would be perfect again. But actually, since 1998 until now, 25 years later, we haven't stopped investing all the money that we made with the brewery.
Right. Okay. So,
but
all the profits come straight back in.
We have grown a lot since, you know.
I mean, so when we were driving here, we were coming down the road. I saw this sort of big industrial-looking building, and I was like, "That can't be the brewery. It's too big."
Yes.
And then as we pulled up, and I started to see like the shape of the roof terrace, I was like, "Oh wow, this is."
Well, I've seen the brewery grow a lot too over the past 20 years. I've been here 20 years, since 2004. So yeah.
And tell me about your arrival, because you said earlier that they didn't really talk about it, the history that they had.
So when I arrived here in 2004, I found a brewery that I never heard about. I live 30 kilometers from here. I never heard about it. I didn't know the story. I didn't. Nobody had ever told me about a brewery brewing a beer for Westvleteren. That was crazy. I never heard about that. So, and I live pretty nearby in Kortrijk. So I was nobody in the area knew a lot about it, and I thought that it was important to start telling our history.
So, I mean, it feels like that history would be partly why, say, he loved the brand and should have been something the brewer is very proud of. Why didn't they talk about it?
I guess
when a sad topic?
I found out that definitely Mr. Klaus, Mr. Guy Klaus, who lost the license, he didn't like to talk about it because he felt like it was something that was taken away from him. Almost like he lost a child and he didn't want to talk about it anymore. It was like a big taboo to talk about it here.
Yeah, I mean, it must have been a real shock and a real loss to the brewery, but equally then it's allowed you to, over 25 years, start to create what you have here. Yeah,
I guess slowly but surely we started building a name for ourselves again, and we did that by the four most important things that I think the four most important things to sell beer are quality, quality, quality.
Go on.
And a good story.
Right.
So if you don't have a good story, you can talk about how long can you talk about beer? You guys have done it a lot now. But
yeah, about 500 videos.
How long can you talk about beer? At a certain point you have to taste it. And then the taste speaks so much more than all the words you utter. So you want people to try it. You want people to try it and fall in love with it. And I guess that's what happened in the past. Many people try it. I think sometimes people think that our monk on the label, it looks a little bit old-fashioned. And am I gonna like this? It's a dark beer. I'm not a dark beer drinker. I don't like beer. People go a lot like this.
Yeah.
And then I tell them, if you don't like beer, you're definitely gonna love this one. Because if you don't like beer, probably you don't like the over IPA-ish, or you don't like the acidity and the finish, or you don't like things that you associate with beer. But this is an exceptional beer that is so smooth and silky. It pleases a lot of Bordeaux drinkers, people who like red wine. So I try to, over the years, I've tried to convince person per person to try our beer. And once they try it, I guess a lot of times they fall in love with it and they stick with it.
And so since parting ways with St. Sixtus, you've released a couple of new beers, such as the wit beer.
Yes.
Was that was an attempt to sort of say to Is that sort of seen as a more modern style for
I guess the
younger drinkers?
first beer that we brought after that the monks didn't brew for them anymore. It's called Bernardus Triple with the green label that everybody here in the area calls Bernadette. Bernadette is the name of the previous owner of the brewery, and she liked to drink Bernardus Triple. And therefore, everybody started calling the beer after her.
Right.
So if you want to be a local here, you don't go to the pub and say, "Hey, can I have 2 Bernardus Triples, please?" But you say, "Can I have 2 Bernadettes?"
So if I go upstairs and say that, they'll
Oh,
be
then
like,
they're gonna love you.
okay,
They're
noted.
gonna love you. They're gonna be like, "Oh, he's either local or he knows a lot about the
Or he's
brewery."
just interviewed Marco. Yeah, Marco, yeah.
Oh, that's possible too. Yes. But to come back on what you said about the wit beer, yes, we tried to add some beers to our range, just to make, because we only had dark beers at the beginning.
Right.
And we had a 4, we had a 6, an 8, and a 12, but they were all dark beers. Right now we have a 4 again. After so many years, we started making that in 2014. It's a single. So I have a single, a double, a triple, and a quadruple. And the single is not, but it's not the same recipe anymore as it used to be. But it's now a blonde beer.
Yeah.
So a blonde beer, 4.8%.
So like the Westmalle Extra that everybody
Yeah, it's
people
the
know.
table beer,
Yeah.
the refter beer we say here, the beer that the monks drink when they are having lunch, so they don't have to drink up 12 or dark beers or strong beers all the time.
They've got more sense than us, yeah. You referenced the monk earlier, and it's considered an urban legend that the monk winks.
It is not, it's true.
It is true.
Yes, I started doing that in 07, I think, 07, 08, and I thought I wanted to make some publicity for the brewery, but we didn't have any budgets. All the money went into the brewery, so there was no money for big publicities. But I thought if I would make some nice joke on the label, maybe people will pick it up and it would become an urban legend, which it has. But now, since we're telling it on yours, to the people, then it's not a legend anymore. Now everybody's going to know it.
Well, it's also on your tour as well. So I heard the story. You didn't even tell Hans that you were doing it.
No, I didn't tell Hans about it. I didn't tell anybody about it. The only guy who knew was the guy who was on the bottling line. So you have to know when we buy labels, they come in packs of 1,000. So I told him, just every pack of 1,000, when you put it in the feeder, just put one of these behind it. And he said, "What is this one?" I said, "Well, the monk winks at you." And he looked at it and he says, "Do you think Hans won't oppose with it?" I said, "We're not going to tell him, just do it." And he started doing it for many years. Every time, like every week, every other week, he would tell me, "Do I still have to do it? Are you sure?" So I had to reconvince him to keep on doing it. And so we kept on doing that, and eventually some people found out and saw it, and then it became like a really nice, it's free publicity. Yeah.
This brewery, we haven't even talked about how incredible this place is. Like, I'd seen the photos on the website, I'd had some friends in Belgium say how wonderful it is, but nothing quite prepares you for not just the roof terrace, not just the tour, but also like the space we're in, the event space, the hops out back, which I'm told some of them are Goldings, so I nailed it.
Yes, Kent Golding. Yes. 2 colors actually. I don't know if you can distinguish.
Oh, so there's a dividing line.
Yeah,
somewhere.
dividing line. It's right where we are. So on
Should
the
I say
left.
dividing vine?
Oh,
never mind.
Oh.
That's
so it's Hallertau Magnum and Kent Golding.
Right.
Yeah, nice, huh?
And all of this goes into your brew. So
all of this plus extra, because this field has been built in 2010, and we have multiplied sales since then.
Yeah,
so,
right. Okay.
It has become a lot bigger.
You mentioned quality, good story, but the Belgian beer market must be incredibly saturated, especially with the styles that you make. These traditional Abbey Trappist style beers. What's been the key to that growth?
I think, well, first of all, for me it was very important to continue to grow in Belgium, because a lot of breweries who are small, like we were, they try to only go to export. but I want to have roots first, and then spread our wings. So for me, it's very important that if people visit Ghent, Bruges, Brussels, Antwerp, or any place in Belgium, that they should be able to find our beer. Because otherwise they're gonna be like, so I thought this brewery that I really love, and I drink a lot of it in my area. Now that I come to Belgium, I can't find it anywhere. So we wanted to prevent that, and that's why we try to grow a lot in Belgium. We made a lot of new customers on draft. So we definitely in the area here. We sponsored some music festivals, and we reached a lot of younger people by that. A lot of older people knew us already, but we reached a lot of younger people. So nowadays, here in the area, when any youngster goes out, either he drinks a Pilsner or he will drink good beer, and then he drinks Bernardus or an Abb-12. I look for the Winking Monk.
I think that's interesting. Like, you know, when I was getting into beer, which would have been around about 2010, St Bernardus was one of those breweries that was always recommended to me as like a great Belgian brewery to sort of start your Belgian beer journey on as well. And that must have been very important to your brand as well, as being this, you know, incredibly high quality, but also quite introductory brand. I guess it's so representative of so much of what happens in Belgium.
Yes, like I said, Abb-12 is not a difficult beer to drink. No. It's not. I mean, it's not. You know, if your first beer ever is going to be Eau de Geuze, you know, that it has more. You need some more time to learn to appreciate that, and I guess this is very accessible, and it's not so difficult to love this or to like it. It has a certain sweetness to it. It doesn't taste like 10% beer.
Nope.
So you could like be fooled by it, I guess.
And I think it's lots of familiar flavors as well, like sort of raisins and dates and lovely sweet things. That
almonds maybe.
Definite kind of nuttiness to it as well, and caramels, and you know, it's a really familiar almost kind of beer, even if it's the first time you sort of drink it. And I find that with quite a few Belgian quads.
And if we've been sitting here a while, and as it warms up, there's even more esters that are released. So if you, this is a beer to enjoy. You know, it's not something that you want to drink fast. You want to let it sit for a while, and when the first pours, you drink it fresh. Let's say you drink it cooler, and then if it warms up, it opens the palate, and it's even better. It's even better the more you drink it, which has nothing to do with the 10% alcohol as well, which just maybe a little bit too, but yeah. Well, it's been a pleasure talking to you. This is one of the most beautiful, well put together breweries I've ever been to, and the beer, as I knew it would be before I arrived, is fantastic. Well, I'm very glad that you liked your visit, and I hope you're going to make something nice of this. We can't fail to, with how beautiful the brewery is and how it's been put together. So thank you so much. I'll drink to that. Cheers. Cheers. Clearly, Marco's approach of humorous marketing and serious business has helped turn the brewery around. But you have to keep coming back to the stunning nature of the beers. Each and every one is an icon in its style, bettered by only a handful of others, if any. Brad and I ordered a few more and sat down on the roof terrace to try and sum up what we'd experienced. So I expected the beer to be good. I also expected a roof terrace, but I think my expectations were way off. It's incredible here. As I said off camera, it's like a Bond villain lair in its scope, magnitude, fortifications. I reckon out of the old vessels, that's where the missiles come out. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. It's, I mean, like we're being glib, but it's one of the most beautiful breweries I've ever been to. Stylish, incredibly stylish. Architect designed everything. Yeah. Even it's in real contrast to like a very classic. I mean, but still, you know, it's got this modern edge, and I think that kind of defines St Bernardus. It's like incredibly classy and modern, but with this sort of heart that goes back a long way. Yeah, I think this the beautiful, different, distinct
place they've created here, it's all a product, I think, of the adversity that they've had to face along the way, right? So they had their status stripped away from them. They were incredibly exposed. They were such a small brewery at that point as well. And I think they were at a point in time where they could have just evaporated, but they rose to the challenge and they kind of had to think outside the box. And I think that has gone into the beer that we're drinking today and the sort of, the environment they've created.
I mean, I think, it's obviously very tough in the Belgian beer market, all beer markets, and to see the amount of money that's been put into this brewery is perhaps the only way to do it, to make sure that you do modernise, even if you don't want to touch the recipes or anything like that. Like, you don't have to modernise the liquid you're producing. You can modernise everything else around so that you can go and drink beautiful traditional beers in a space that, feels as modern and as exciting as any kind of modern craft brewery. And that's a real contradiction to some extent, but it just works so beautifully when it's done right, like here.
I think you can pick this up with the hop field attached.
Right, yeah.
And you could stick this in New Zealand, you could stick this in somewhere in California, wherever, and it's going to be cutting edge, exciting destination kind of place.
Yeah.
I'm so blown away by it.
I was kind of speechless, and I kind of ran out of ways to tell them. Every time we met a new employee, and they were like, "What do you think?" We're like, we just cannot explain how amazing this place is. It is really very, very special and very surprising. So if you have a car or you're very good on a bike, make sure you come to see some Bernardus. You can drink it in a beautiful, fusty Bruges bar like we did last night, or you can come to this incredible modern oasis of hoppy, yeasty calmness.
That's it, right? There's a calmness to this place. We're in a tranquil environment, but it's very respectful of where we are. I don't think it sits heavy on the land. I think it adds to where we are, Jonny.
It's a wonderful phrase to finish on. It doesn't sit heavy on the land, but the Abbot 12 still sits heavy on my mind the next day.
Cheers.
Cheers.